So the Avata has been out for 6 to 7 months now, and in today's video I want to give you the pros and cons, the long-term pros and cons with this drone. Am I still using it after 7 months, and is it something that I can still recommend? And today's video is going to be completely transparent, so I'm not going to hold back on anything. Now first, let's do a quick brief of the settings here, just in case you're not familiar with how the Avata records video, what type of lens it has, and also what type of resolution it can record with. The Avata can shoot from 4K 30 up to 4K 60, and it also has a 10-bit color profile for those that wants to add the extra dynamic range and color control. It has a 117-inch Siemens sensor and a fixed aperture of f2.8, so it's not going to be the brightest lens, but it's still going to be bright enough. It also has a super wide field of view of 155 degrees, so if you're familiar with the Action 3, it has the same wide angle view. The lens is equivalent to 12.7mm and has a focal length of 2.34mm. It's compatible with both the goggles V2 and also the new goggles 2, which I also want to talk about a bit later. So now that we're done with the boring part of the video, let's just dive straight into the Avata itself. We're going to talk about the user experience, the pros and cons, and also should you consider getting one if you don't have one already. So let's start with the pros. After 7 months of crashing this into, yeah, you name it, I probably crashed into it. It's still holding up pretty good. The durability of this Cinewhoop is extreme. I'm not gonna lie, I've crashed this on purpose many times, but this thing just don't want to die at all. This is my third Avata. The two previous Avatas just dropped in the drink, as you may know already. So this is my third Avata, and this is actually the unit I've been crashing the most. And when I look through the cage here and the prop guards, I can barely see any scratches on this. The only thing that I've actually changed is the upper frame, which I will come to later in this video. But looking at the prop guards here, there's barely any scratches. There's a tiny scratch here at the front, which is probably from one of the crashes I had into the asphalt, and it has some marks on the back side here, just a tiny little scratch, and this is probably from the same crash. Now anyway, just crashing this so many times into asphalt, into trees, everything, I would have thought that this would break easily. So overall, the durability of this drone is better than I expected, and I didn't expect this to last this long. So I'm actually gonna give the durability of this drone a 10 out of 10. That's how good it is. I just can't seem to break it unless I, fly straight into the water. So 10 out of 10 on the durability. Now next up we have the battery life. I've been pushing this about 12 to 14 minutes in manual mode in most of my flights, because I usually fly at a lower speed and then increase the speed in post, which gives me 1, more time in the air, and 2, you won't be able to spot the difference anyway, so I might as well do it that way. But going flat out with the sticks, I'm getting about 8 to 9 minutes tops, which is still decent compared to other FPV drones. But the distance you travel also impact how much battery life you're gonna get out of these batteries. So that's one of the reasons I'm always getting as close as I can to the area I want to fly, which again gives me more battery life since I don't have to travel for a longer distance when capturing my cinematic videos. In some cases, of course, I have to get out there because it's going to be an island or something like that, and I can't really drive out to an island, and I don't want to hire a boat just to go out and get, like 5 seconds of FPV shots. So I might as well fly out at the beginning of my flight just to capture that, and then return and see how much battery I have left. Now, compared to other FPV drones, like custom FPV drones, which usually gets about 4 to 6 minutes of battery tops, the Avata can run for as long as 15 to 16 minutes if you fly this thing in manual mode. It's going to be a little bit boring, but to test out at first, as a beginner, going into manual mode, normal mode, going into normal mode, and then just fly, it feels like forever. 15-16 minutes if you fly close to where you take off is definitely achievable with the Avata, which is insane if you ask me. The battery is also a plug-and-play battery, so you can just charge, fly, and then recharge. No need to mess around with additional equipment. So for the battery, I'm gonna give this 8 out of 10. Now let's talk about the design of the Avata. It has a really nice looking design, and I really like how this thing looks. But I'm actually quite surprised that the camera still works. I mean, after all the face-on crashes I've had, I would have thought that at least the camera got some scratches or marks, but because of the way that this is designed with the upper frame protecting the lens from impact, I can't see any marks on the camera at all, which is quite surprising. And not to mention the prop guards, without these I would probably have bought a new Avata each week. The only mark I can see on the guards is, like I said, this small scratch on the back here and also this one on the front, which is barely noticeable, but other than that this looks completely new. And one awesome thing as well is that you can actually take off the prop guards and you can just respray them in any color you want, which is also quite cool. I'm actually thinking about doing that. Maybe I'll save that for a different video. So as for design, I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10 on the rating. Yes, let's move over to the next one, which is the camera. Now, this camera and the footage coming from this drone is amazing if you ask me. I really love everything that's coming out of this lens. The settings I use is 4K 50 FPS and the Cine-like and added ND filter from Freewell. The footage is also color graded with my signature LUTs, which is also on sale right now. So all the links will be down in the description below if you want to check out my signature LUTs as well. The most versatile LUTs that you can get. You can use them with any camera, the Avata, Sony a7S III, you can use it with your Insta360X3, you can use it with your DJI Mini 3 Pro, any camera. So links will be down in the description below. But what I do like is the 4K 50 FPS coming from this, because that also allows me to slow the clip down to 50% if I want to add some sort of slow motion. And I don't really want to drop down to 2.7K when I have the option to shoot 4K. 4K is always going to be better, and especially with a camera lens like this, which is 117 inch and a fixed aperture of f2.8. But I also love the normal color profile coming from this, and I think I mentioned this in my Action 3 video. I started using normal color profile a bit more, and I quite like it because this is still my favorite and main cinematic color profile. But the normal color profile, if this is something you can work with, it's definitely worth it, because you can go out and you can shoot your videos and then you adjust the saturation of your clip and you're done. That's how simple it is. But you're not going to get that dynamic range if you're looking into getting the best possible quality coming from the Avata. You would need to go with the DC-like 10-bit color profile. Now, also the image stabilization coming from the Avata. I totally love the image stabilization. It's one of the best things with the DJI devices. They put out such a good stabilization in all their gear. And what I've been using the most with this is the Rocksteady, and for me this is more than enough. But you can also add some extra smoother stabilization by using gyroflow stabilization, which will make it better. But like I said, for me Rocksteady is more than enough. But if you want it to be even smoother, then you can add the gyroflow to that and stabilize it with that. So definitely a huge plus for the Avata, which allows any user to have all these different ways of stabilizing the footage. You also have the Horizon Steady. I don't like using that with the FPV drones because it looks like a normal drone, and if I want that look, I can just fly the Mini 3 Pro. So I'm using Rocksteady all the time, and I just love how the result is coming out. And if I need just a tiny bit of extra stabilization, I can always do that in post. But yeah, from the footage and video quality coming from the Avata, I'm gonna give that an 8 out of 10, just because you're also able to mount an action camera on the top here like a GoPro Hero 11 if you get a mount, and that will give you that 10 out of 10 image quality, because the footage will look better coming from a GoPro Hero 11. So let's talk about goggles. We have the Goggles 2 and we also have the Goggles V2. So I've been using both, and I think I've been using these two quite equally now, since this is what I've been using with the DJI FPV drone for a very long time, and these now with the Avata. If you're looking to buy a new pair of goggles, if you bought the Avata, you have the Goggles V2 already and the FPV controller, should you get the Goggles 2, or if you have the combo which comes with the Goggles 2 and the motion controller and you got the FPV controller, should you then, you know, maybe sell the Goggles 2 and get the Goggles V2, or just get the Goggles V2 in addition? I don't know what you should do, but I'm gonna tell you and give you my experience using these two goggles, and there is a difference here, and we're gonna talk about that as well. So first, if you have a big face, maybe you should go with the V2 goggles. If you have a smaller face, maybe you should go with the V2 goggles as well, or maybe the goggles 2. Using both of the goggles now, there is a difference. Not much, but there is a difference. The goggles 2 have a much better image, but the goggles V2 has a higher refresh rate of 144 Hz compared to the 100 on the goggles 2. So if you ever played FPV shooters, you know that the difference between 100 and 144 Hz is noticeable. And on the DJI's website under the goggles 2, it also says up to 100 Hz. But on the goggles V2, it says 144. So because of the OLED screen, which we have on the goggles 2, the refresh rate is not going to be fixed to 100. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is something to that. So this is up to 100 because of the OLED screen, and this is a fixed 144 Hz. So we will have the same Hertz throughout your entire flight. In most of the situations, you're not going to experience anything because it still has up to 100 Hertz. But yeah, now you know the numbers. So if you're all about refresh rates, you want everything to be silky smooth on your screen, you want to go with the V2 goggles. But if you don't care about that and you're going to fly close to where you take off and you're going to be in a radius of like 500 to 1000 meters, so if you want the best quality coming from your goggles, you're going to go with the goggles 2. But for the optimal range, from what I've seen online, most of the FPV pilots, the pro FPV pilots, which not me, but the pro FPV pilots are using the goggles V2 with their custom FPVs, and also those that mainly fly the Avata on a daily basis or weekly basis. Most of those professional pilots use the goggles V2. So there might be something to that as well. And if you're using glasses, you need to take those off if you're going to use the goggles 2 because of the small form factor, but it still has diopters, so you can adjust the lens correction and you can, correct so you can see. But with the goggles V2, you don't have to take off your glasses. This fits perfectly with the glasses on and doesn't have any diopters, so you can't change that. So if you use glasses, you might just use it with the goggles or put on some contact lenses or however you want to do it. But if I needed to pick one of these and then sell the other, since I have the DJI FPV drone as well, it would probably be the goggles V2. I also think this has a better fit on my face, and the only thing I would change is the padding here because it's horrifically hard and it just squeezes my face. But I can always change these, and yeah, that's basically, if I'm gonna pick one, it's gonna be the goggles V2. Even though I love the goggles 2 and the quality coming from this. From using both the goggles for a longer period of time now, I think the goggles V2 is going to be my main choice. Now let's talk about the cons here, the cons of the Avata. There's a lot of different cons. It's not only pro things with the Avata, there's cons. I think you guessed it. The first one, yes, it's the SD card placement. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about this because it's so crap and doesn't deserve any attention, but what's done is done. We can't do anything about it, and hopefully it's being changed on the next unit. But yeah, I hate it every single time I'm out flying with the Avata because I know I have to get in there when I come back home to remove the SD card, and that's one of the things that I don't look forward to after my flight with the Avata. Completely, it's bad. And also the battery ejection, which is happening when you fly your Avata. I don't know how many times the battery has ejected from my unit. It's just awful how simple this can eject. And if you're not using a strap or a battery clamp or anything like that, it's gonna eject on the smallest impact. And what usually happens is that your battery is gonna fall into the water, and if there's not any water around, the Avata is gonna make sure that your battery is finding some water, and the battery is gonna drown itself. And that's what happens to me I don't know how many times, I think 3 times. That's 3 times too many. You know, they should actually start boxing some of that mounts or straps with the Avata when they ship it up, because you're gonna crash this. You're gonna crash this. And that also leads us over to the next con about this, which I happened to discover only a few months ago, and that's related to the upper frame. If your battery, or not if, but when your battery ejects, it has a huge risk of damaging the inside of the frame as well, which I honestly wasn't aware of. But I made a full video of this, so I'm gonna leave that down in the description below if you want to check it out. But what happened is, on the inside of the frame here, there is some tracks that these things on the Avata battery is gonna slide into, and when this ejects, it's not always going straight out, but it has maybe a twist to it, and if that twist happens, it's gonna damage the extremely thin plastic which is here and break that off. And once this is off, your battery will basically sit like this on one of the sides, and that means the impact doesn't have to be as great for the battery to be ejected, and which, you know, you don't want to lose the battery. So definitely use a battery strap or a clamp. So go get one right now if you have the Avata. There's some links down in the description below to original Dobo's battery clamp, so make sure to check that out. They are really good, and I can highly recommend them. Now, not to mention the range. I'm living in Europe. The range is extremely bad. You don't want to get an FPV drone to fly, you know, in a straight line, open water, straight line, and that's it, fly back, because that's what you have to do if you want to reach longer distances than 1,000 or so meters. You have to have a complete straight line of sight without any interferences. As soon as you go behind a tree line, doesn't matter how far away you are, you could be 100 meters, you're gonna be 200 meters, the signal is gonna drop extremely fast. And once the signal is dropped, it's gonna kick into failsafe, start hovering, and you will have a return to home. You don't want this to happen, because you're gonna waste so much time doing it. It's boring. It might, you know, destroy your shot if you're on a streak. Yeah, it's really, really bad. Even with the FCC hack on the Avata, it's still bad. It's because of the regulations that we have here in Europe. We don't have the benefits that the US and other countries have. So like I said earlier in the video, a huge reason why I'm always getting as close as I can to the spot I want to fly and record cinematic videos, because it really helps a lot. So keep that in mind when you're out flying with your Avata. If you see something far over there, then it's better to do a 30-minute walk to that location, then fire up your Avata, because your flight experience around that area is going to be much greater than if you would fly out there and then lose the signal and wait for the Avata or to return to home, or wait for the signal to come back in. So definitely worth considering. If you find different areas you want to fly, get as close as possible. So yeah, that's the list of cons with the Avata. It usually comes back to the same things with the SD card, the battery, and now the frame. And I reported this issue a few weeks ago after I got this unit as well. So the battery ejection and the SD card placement is nothing new. It's been there forever, but you know, that's the only things that I can report now after 7 months of usage, and that means this drone is holding up pretty well, and there's not many issues to the Avata. DJI also added a minor fix to the prop washout to prevent the Avata from dropping out of the sky when you do a quick turn or flip, and these settings helps a lot, especially if you're a brand new drone pilot and it's the first time you get into FPV and you want to get the awesome Avata. It definitely helps if you want to go into manual mode the first time ever. You just hit the sticks a little bit wrong and it goes into prop wash, it will correct and then hover in place in normal mode, which is one really awesome feature. And that's something that the DJI FPV drones have: the normal mode, the sports mode, and also the manual mode. And the fact that you can change between these during a flight is insane. It is a huge thing if you think about it. If you're out flying with your Avata and you need to wait for something and you know, you're flying in manual mode, you don't know what to do, you can just flip it into normal mode. It will hover in place. As long as you keep the sticks even, it will prevent the Avata from flying up or down. So if you go into the normal mode here, just make sure that you correct the stick so it stays in place and that it will hover. But I think original Dobo has a better example of this. When he was out shooting for a client or a friend, he was using the normal, sport and the manual option to just keep it hovering in place. So links down to his video. I think his explanation is spot on when it comes to how good this is with the different modes. So down in the description, make sure to check out his video. So yeah, after 7 months of usage, despite the shitty range here in Europe, I can still recommend this to the fullest. It's the best FPV drone I've ever flown. And I don't feel like I need a custom FPV. I don't feel like I ever need a custom FPV because this is doing everything that I want this to do. And if I need to go faster, need to do more freestyle stuff, I'll go with the DJI FPV drone. So I don't see the point in getting a custom FPV. The only reason might be for the range here in Norway. But for most of my needs and everything that I need an FPV drone to do, I don't need a custom FPV drone. This is everything that I need along with my DJI FPV drone. It is bad that the range is typically between 500 and 1000 meters, but like I also said now for the third time, getting as close to the point you want to record as possible is going to be a much better option than flying out to that location and then you also get less battery life because you need to fly out there. Now, I'm also curious to know what type of goggles are you using? Are you using the goggles 2 or the goggles V2, and which controller are you mainly flying with? Is it the motion controller or is it the DJI FPV controller? I know this has been really hard to get hold of, hasn't it? So curious if you're still waiting for one or if you finally got your FPV controller and can get out there and do some manual flying. So let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, that would be highly appreciated if you consider doing that. And also, if you found any value in today's video, this long time review of the Avata, I know there's not much that has changed. I still love this drone, but if you found any value, let me know by giving a like. And do you have the Avata? Will you be getting the Avata? And if there is any improvements to the Avata as it is now, what would those be? Let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.